So what happens if I move around this squash deformer? So you can see it squashes my box differently. Okay, so I'm going to undo that. And if I rotate it, I can make it squash from a different side. Right, so it's the same kind of squash, except this time it's going front to back. Okay. What if I wanted to squash, say, from the top up, or from the bottom up? Well, then I can change my low bound again to 0. Change my high bound to 2. And now when it squashes, the bottom is going to stay planted where it's at. It's probably a more desirable behavior, but it's going to move the top up and down as it stretches, and it's going to pull the top down as it flattens out. Okay, so now I've got both of these deformers on this object. So if I select the box, and it's already squashed, and I go to the bend deformer on the input of the channel box, and I add in some curvature, this is kind of what happens. Alright. Well, the bottom is locked out, but remember what we did on the dry erase board. If the bend is happening first, and then we do the squash, then it doesn't matter which order we alter the attributes. It matters the order that they were created in. And we created the bend first, so it's bending it, and then it's trying to stretch it. So if we want to see that, I'll set the factor on the squash back down to 0, and you can see that, in fact, that's what happened. Well, we'll see this visually here in a second. Okay? So I've got it bent, and this is not really the behavior I wanted though, right? So I'm going to go ahead and squash it again. Now if I go back to my input editor, I'm going to show you another way to get there. If you go to Window, General Editors, maybe I lied. Relationships Editors. Okay, I'm lying to you. I don't ever use the other way. Okay. I guess I don't know the other way. Forget that I ever said that. Fast forward, do that. Okay, so just right click on it, Inputs, All Inputs. Okay, and here's the list of my deformers. I can see, like I told you, the bottom one happens first, so the tweak happens first, and then there's a bend, and then there's the squash. So if I want this to work differently, all I have to do is middle mouse click the squash and drag it below the bend. And I can see how it affects my model so dramatically, right? Now, it turns out that my bend, the high bound on my bend isn't set high enough. It doesn't go, it's not tall enough. So I can edit that. Best way to do this is to undo the curvature. And you'll see, okay, let me hide something real quick. Okay, so there's my bend, and this little line that represents the bend only goes halfway up the model right now while it's squashed. it bends the entire cube when it's not, or when it's stretched. It bends the entire cube when it's not stretched, but when it is stretched, it doesn't. So I need to increase the high bound. You can go as high as you want to, right? But I think that's probably as high as it can go. You could punch in your own value if you want to, and that would be excessive. But okay, so anytime you run into a limitation in Maya, it's usually not a limitation, it's usually a suggestion when you're entering a value in. You can, by numerically entering your own value, instead of using the slider, you can usually exceed, I can't think of a scenario where you can't exceed the default values. Okay, so anyway, now that my bend is tall enough to handle this stretched cube, if I go to the curvature and bend it, you can see that it actually looks like probably how we wanted it to. Okay, so we go back, select the cube, squash it, and going further, I can go up until it reaches the end of that line, and then it stops bending. I think that's probably safe to say that was far enough, though. So now I've got a good behavior between my squash and my stretch, my squash and stretch and my bend.